basically what Jethro told Moses what to do.
First, I want to say thank you to every one of you who has pushed past whatever it is you had to push past to be here tonight, because it is important that we all participate in our political process. My name is Barry Hess. I'm the Libertarian candidate for governor, and it's kind of an interesting race this time. It's actually my 4th time running as the nominee for the Libertarian Party, and I'm very proud of that, because normally you see candidates who will get into a race, and when they don't win, what do? They disappear. It's amazing that because they didn't really care. The thing about being a libertarian is it's a lifestyle. It's a philosophy. You can't divorce yourself from it. So when we say we're willing to get involved in the political process, it's a lifetime commitment. We will not give up on freedom. We will not give up on our Constitution. We will not give up on America. We are going to stay until the lights get turned out. Hopefully you people will make sure that doesn't happen. Now we've had a whole lot of differences, and I should tell you, I'll give you just a little bit of background where I came from. I was a Republican. I grew up in New Hampshire. I was working for a candidate when I actually was in law school, and just as a flunky. And one day he said to me, after we had a little conversation, he said, "Barry, you're not a Republican." And my jaw hit the ground, because this particular person never said a bad word about anybody. He was a wonderful man. He said, "You're not a Republican." And my jaw hit the ground, and I said, "Yes, I am. I'm from New Hampshire. You had dinner with my dad 2 weeks ago." And he smiled, but he must have seen the screwed up look on my face. He said, "No, you're a libertarian." Now, I had just graduated from one of the top colleges in the country with political science. I had never heard the word before. And obviously my face showed that. So he looked down at me in his grandfatherly way, and he said, "You don't back up on principle. And it's because you hold government to the same standard of moral accountability as you would any individual." The words struck me, and they obviously stayed with me. About 6 years later, I pried myself out of that party, found out all my blood brother friends, you know, my bestest friends in the whole world in the Republican Party. The minute I signed as a libertarian, I became a pariah. That's how deep our friendships went. Welcome to politics. Incidentally, that man's name was Ronald Reagan, and he had a huge influence on me. He fancied himself a libertarian. In fact, after he was out of office, he'd come here to speak, and I got a few moments. And I ran into one of the guys who was a press secretary on the campaign. And he told me that Reagan actually remembered our conversation. That'll get your heart going. I mean, I was just a flunky. But when he told me that it was the highest compliment he had ever paid anyone in politics, that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And I decided to get involved, and that's what I've done. We've had a lot of fun here in the political process in Arizona. And we've certainly had an influence trying to bring the Republican Party back to what it used to be. It used to be honest. It used to be the good guys. It used to be a lot of those virtues that we hold as American values, but it is not anymore. And if anybody thinks that hanging on to a Republican over a Democrat or a Democrat over a Republican, it makes any difference whatsoever, I just point out just one of the things. When I came here in 1980, the border looked exactly like it does now. All the arguments and the political issues were exactly what they are now. Now, we've had Republicans and we've had Democrats. Anybody see any difference? Because I sure don't. And I know most of these people personally, and I like them. I have to say I don't hate anybody. If I did, it becomes an active verb. But in any event, it's just a difference in thinking. And here's what libertarians are all about. The Declaration of Independence. See, we wrote it. That's what many people don't realize. Libertarianism is the oldest political philosophy on this continent. That was the attitude, and that's where libertarianism as we know it today comes from. All of those ideals and all of those values in the Declaration of Independence. We also wrote another document. It's called the Bill of Rights. See, the libertarians were the ones saying, we just got rid of a tyrant 3,000 miles away. 300 miles away isn't any better. And that was the whole attitude. Wrote most of the Constitution except for the 5/8 of a man thing, which that was the big hang-up, because there is a philosophy amongst libertarians, and it's called everybody equal, period. We don't care about your color. We don't care about your race, your sex, your sexual proclivities. We don't care about any of those labels that politicians try to divide us up into groups with. Because that's all politicians do. They divide us up into groups, they pit us against each other, and then they offer to referee. Do you see how the game is being played? They want to keep relevance. So they don't want to solve a problem. That's why the border's not fixed now. And here I am. I'm a libertarian. And you've already heard, I'm sure, that people say they're for open borders. Yes and no. Depends on your definition. An open border, I think, in the general sense of the smear campaigns and the propaganda, is there's no border at all. Everybody come on in. That's not how it is. When we say open borders, we mean we want to allow people who are friendly to us and offer no threat to Americans to come on down. Welcome to America. It's an easy way to get in. But at the same time, we do have to protect our borders. So here I am in the strange position, being a libertarian, with the only plan that will absolutely shut down the border to all illegal crossing. Period. And I can prove it. It's a system that doesn't require a wall, because one of the few things that Janet Napolitano did say, you show me a 20-foot wall, I'll show you a 21-foot ladder. Well, we've seen that in Gaza as well. There is some sense to that. We don't need a wall. And many people don't even know what's stopping a wall from being built. Does anybody know? Money. It's the environmentalists. The ones, they're talking about the migration habits of the cougar and the bear and the armadillo. That's what's holding everything up. And they always will. They will not be overcome. My plan is actually pretty much electronic in its nature, and it's been in use for over 50 years around a military base without a single penetration. And this particular base is where they keep secrets. Your government keeps secrets from you. It's called Groom Lake. Many of you might know it as Area 51. And it is real, and nobody has ever gotten through. We can shut it down for a nominal amount of money, and inside of 6 months set up that same circuitry. Nobody's coming across illegally. Now, why would a libertarian develop a plan that is going to shut down that border? At least other than at the openings, where we want them to come through and be checked for disease and backgrounds, of course. My concern is a whole different one. It's because I happen to like people. And over 260 people are found in our deserts dead every year trying to find this thing we call America. Are you even aware of that? Most people don't even talk about it. I want to see no dead people in our desert anymore. It's a matter of conscience. Not just the mere inconvenience it is to other political candidates. But that's just one of the issues where I think if people understood what they can have with a libertarian, they'd be jumping on board without any hesitation. And you don't have to worry about us with special interests. We don't pander to a single special interest. I made a big point of not asking for any group's endorsement. Why? Because I serve individuals. The libertarians are the party of the smallest minority in the world. You. You count. You count as much as any department of government to me. And that's what I'm here to protect. That's what all of government is here to protect. There's only one reason government was even set up on this continent. And that was to protect the rights and properties of the individual. And that's where we stand today. Our platform has never changed, and it's not going to. Because the idea of freedom is actually spreading throughout the world. We have libertarians in virtually every other country of the world. Most people don't know that. You ain't gonna find no Republican Democrats over there, because to me they're both the same. All I see, the difference I see between a Republican and a Democrat is a percentage or a degree. How much of your money are they gonna steal from taxation? How far into your bedroom are they gonna get? How much regulation are they going to add? But it's just a matter of percentages and degrees. I like to say the Republican says, I'm only going to steal a nickel from you, but I'm going to kick you twice. The Democrat will come along and say, I'm going to steal a dime, but I'm only going to kick you once. And then that wet blanket libertarian comes onto the political scene and says, how about no kicking, no stealing? How about that? Well, that takes the fun out of it. because they like to fight. It's always about the percentages and the degrees, and it always will be. So that I hope to bring some common sense into this playground that we call politics. And trust me, the last place I would want to be involved in is politics. It's a self-defense measure. That's why I'm here. I'm not here for any, I didn't even know how much the governor made until last year. And this is my 4th time running for the office. That should tell you something. And at the same time, as you look what's going on now, if you see someone who spent $5 million of their personal fortune, that's 50 years worth of salary to get the office, does anybody really honestly think they don't expect that money to come back? That office can be used for a lot of different reasons. We hear about dark money. Well, what about the dark money being spent on Channel 12 and Channel 10? They both had televised debates, but only for the Republican Democrats. Isn't that interesting? They didn't want you to see that there was a choice. That's dark money. That's free advertising, and we're going to be pressing it legally for the in-kind contribution that it was to their campaigns. We'll see how they feel about that, because we do like to play some games. We might as well have some fun at this political stuff, but let's talk about a couple of issues. One is Common Core. We're here at the school. It's a good issue. It's a big issue. Does everybody know what Common Core is?
Yes.
Now, they'll try and sell you and tell you that it's just a set of standards. That is not what it is. It has a curriculum that comes with it that is amazing. It's like La La Land. And it's been in use in New York City and in Philadelphia for 2 years. And what they did is they took the general population, and they have what are called percentiles. That means competency levels. They took them from the 70th percentile all the way to the 39th. That's what we can hope for with Common Core. I am adamantly opposed. And one of the reasons is because what made us #1 back in the early and mid-60s, #1 in the world in education, and nobody even questioned it. And we were so, so grateful. Now we're rated 39th or 40th in the world. And Arizona is rated 47th to 50th in the country. We're at the bottom of the trash heap. And it's not going to get any better with a Republican or a Democrat, because nobody appreciates education more than a Libertarian. But I have a different plan. Right now, the education budget takes about 50% of the overall general budget. And why? Is because you get people like Fred Duvall, whose only mantra is, I'm going to get more money to education, more money to education. What he's really saying is, I'm going to buy votes from special interests involved in education so I can get elected. That's what he's really saying. I want to see us cut that budget down to 20%, and we can do it. Part of it is our diversity of choice here. I think that's a lot of great things. We have charter schools, which have been blowing it up in a great way. And I think it's really making them look bad. Well, it's funny because several years ago, Jan Brewer stole one of my ideas, and it's called K-12. Anybody heard of it? It's a distance learning. You learn over the internet with courses. I took the idea, I stole it, so I don't feel too terribly bad, from MIT, the most competitive school in the country to get into. MIT puts all of their courses for free online. Last year, they said they would even start testing you, so that what you can do is take a course online, and it's up to you. You take the course for free, you pay a couple of $100, they will test you in it for your competency, and you can get the equivalent of an MIT degree. And that's where education is going. And incidentally, that's called distance learning, and it's not the whole program, because there are some different courses that don't lend themselves to distance learning, like cutting open a little frog and all that stuff in your anatomy classes and biology. But it really shows something amazing, because after 1 year in distance learning, students average 2.5 years ahead of their brick and mortar counterparts. Wow. Pretty amazing. But we also have a lot of different ways to learn. And who should care where you learn? We just care that you learn. Because here in Arizona, we're one of 8 states that has a state constitutional requirement to provide free or nearly free public instruction. So we do have to do that. I think we should get rid of that if we can, but that's not #1 on my list. But I think that if we're going to do it, we should do it as effectively and efficiently as is possible. So I would push for a very aggressive distance learning program. And already I'm hearing back from people, they go, you know where epidemics are spread? They got Ebola just came into the country, for anybody who doesn't know it. You know where they're spread, right? In our government schools. That's where they go and get stuff and bring it home to you. At bad behavior or diseases, whatever. I think it's important that we take control of our education of our own children and not just pass the buck on to government bureaucrats, because you can never learn by committee, ever. It's not going to work. It cannot work, because that committee, whoever is in charge of it, is always going to have their own bias, and it's going to be self-preservation. So they never want to solve a problem, because then they wouldn't have anything to do. Nobody works themselves out of a job in a government circumstance. I mean, it's literally never happened. I want to start seeing that happen. I want to fix the border so we can move on to things like education. But the biggest issue, and I'm sure everybody here has felt it, jobs. We need employment. We are bleeding employment. And it's not just the namby-pamby low-paying jobs that we are getting, the service jobs. It's the big stuff. They're taking our manufacturing out of the country because we are not competitive on the business level. We're not competitive on the academic and educational level. So my proposition is that we want to pare down the courses for our government schools, down to the basics, down to the reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science, and of course, critical thinking skills. Make sure our kids can master those skills so that they are prepared to learn, because as so many in this room understand, our education actually starts with our diploma or with our degree. That's when you start learning. I mean, in school you think, I got it all, it's all bagged. Surprise, welcome to the real world. But I would be offering to the corporations who want to come here and pluck from our wonderful cherry patch, telling them they need to educate their workers in those specialty areas that they should be educated in. And last night I met with the director of the Maricopa County Community Colleges. I was surprised to find they're doing it now, but they don't want a lot of it to go. You have push and pull here in politics, and I thought that was amazing. I was so excited. They just started it like 6 months ago. They're actually talking to corporate heads saying, what do you need the students to do? So when I say a corporate school, it doesn't have to be in, Motorola. It doesn't have to be in Honeywell. It can be somewhere else, but where the proficiency is designed by the market's needs. That makes a lot more sense than trying to teach every student to be able to do every job on the planet, which is what they're talking about. Whenever anybody says a world-class education, that's code word for we're just going to teach them a bunch of stuff they're never going to use. And that's really what it comes down to. So I have a more workable plan in the education where we can bring it down into reasonable distance in our budget, and my goal is 20% rather than the 50% it occupies now. A lot of people are concerned about teachers. Well, we also know that teachers know what's going on. Half my family teachers. And it's funny because they're different kind of teachers. My grandmother was certainly a different teacher than the one you'd get today. But today, over 1/3 of our government school teachers take their own children, and guess where they're educated? They're either homeschooled or they're in private school because they know and they want their kids to get the best. And so do I. I want the best for everybody's kids. But when Jan Brewer funded the K-12 program, the funny part was it was designed to fail. She deliberately underfunded it, deliberately put these things in place so that she could squash that idea right off to the side, because the Arizona Education Association isn't my best friend, and they are a voting bloc. And the funny thing was, after 2 years, they were ready for their aha moment, and that's when they found out the kids were so far ahead of their brick and mortar counterparts, there was no going back, and that's where we're going as a massive movement. I love the diversity of education opportunities and the choices that we have here, because as I've said about Common Core is the attempt to homogenize education across the country. So if you move your kids from Arkansas to Pennsylvania, when they get there, they can pick up at the same place they left off. That is the whole reason, they say, for Common Core. It's not a big good reason, I don't think. I would rather have them in a competitive environment like when we were kids, and we used to be able to say, my school's better than your school. And we could back it up academically, scholastically, athletically. Nowadays, with this Common Core nonsense, all they can say is, my school's just like yours. There is no innovation. There is no imagination. If you want to destroy a country, just destroy the imagination of the youth and you win, because that is what's happening. That is what Common Core is all about. So that is why I'm against Common Core. Now, one of the things that people have said to me about my platform, because the #1 position has always been, and it always will be, I want to eliminate the personal income and property tax. People say, why? I mean, Doug was going to do it. It was funny because old Doocy, Weaseling, because at first he wanted to eliminate it too. Now he's down to, well, I just want to get it as close to zero. Because there's no moral principle behind what he's saying. My moral principle, pretty simple. You come take somebody else's stuff without their permission, it's called theft. Ask a 3-year-old. And theft is still theft, even by government, even if they come with a gun. And even if they say it's for the children, it's still theft. And we've got to set our, we can't allow our government leaders to continue to steal and not expect every member of the citizenry to follow suit. Doesn't that make sense? So they say, well, wait a minute, how are you gonna fund government? Oh, wait, we've got to have government. Well, I have a plan for that too. And that plan is very simple. Capping at 9.9% a retail transaction tax on all retail transactions. There you go. Pretty simple. If we get rid of the income tax and the property tax, there will be at least 30 to 40% more in everybody's pocketbook. And they're going to spend it. And they're going to force businesses through transactions to expand and bring more jobs in. And it's going to be a happy place. You think people wouldn't be happy we get rid of the income tax? Oh, heck, man. We're going to be the happiest people in the entire world. Sell little jump-around shoes or something. But along with that, we want to bring businesses in. And my plan is very simple. I'm a simple guy. 4% on the gross, no deductions of every corporation that seeks the protections of the corporate veil. It's a corporate veil fee, not really a tax. 4%. Do you know what the corporate leaders that I've been speaking with have said? They say, you give us that kind of political, tax, and regulatory stability, and we're going to flock to your place. Because it makes sense in this world when they're always dodging and ducking and dodging between tax loopholes and lobbyists and legislators, and not all of them are pure, I'm going to tell you, and I don't care where they're from or what party. Some of them actually believe the stuff they tell you. Not so with about 95% of them, because that is one of my tests, integrity. I don't care if you disagree with me, as long as you honestly disagree with me. If you believe what you're saying, because I certainly believe what I'm saying. The interesting thing is as we get on stage with these other guys, I sense the naivete where they're being pushed. They're being controlled. Jan Brewer, come on, somebody want to tell me she's a Republican? Seriously?
No.
I ask people, look at her record. We had 22 months of her on a test drive, but many people stupidly and irresponsibly voted for her because she was a Republican. And now we're just further down the road. We're just breathing the same air. We haven't made any progress whatsoever. And Doug and Fred, they don't offer you any progress. All they offer you is, we're going to hold on to what we got. Well, that's no way to get out of a depression. Because we're coming into one of the worst depressions in world history, if not the worst. It's already worse statistically than the 1929 depression, and it's just lagging. And it's government throwing fake money into the market, but it doesn't bring jobs. And there's no such thing as a jobless recovery. There's got to be jobs to pay the bill next month. With the government, this quantitative easing nonsense, they're just throwing money out there. That's all they're doing, just throwing a bunch of money out, but it's not supported by anything. It's a temporary fix, and that's what they've been doing. And we've seen what they've happened with this quantitative easing, haven't you? Remember last year when they were flapping all over the place, whoa, we got the debt ceiling, we got to fix that, right, everybody? Remember that? It was the big, the world's going to collapse if we don't fix that debt ceiling. Does anybody even know where it stands today? Well, I'll tell you where it stands today. Last year, just several months ago, both houses unanimously voted to remove the debt ceiling. Right now, there is no debt ceiling in America. They're just printing money willy-nilly, and it's not news because there's no cap that they're approaching. And the numbers just keep ticking away. Because I'm looking forward to the day when the young people that we keep telling, and we've stolen their hope by telling them that you're going to be paying for all of the stuff that we get without you getting any new stuff, or without you paying for your own families. These kids are, you wonder why they go out and mutilate themselves and they just do destructive things? Because they aren't given the hope that we had when we were kids. When we were 16 and 17, we could set the world on fire, and that's what people said, go out there and do it. You know, make something of yourself. And so a lot of our generation, I'm 57, our generation, you saw a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. I mean, how many kids these days are buying houses when they're 16? Or owning property and managing it when they're 18? Well, that used to happen all the time. Now it doesn't. Now, heck, full-grown adults can't even get a house with all the mortgage fraud in which isn't being prosecuted. I would like to see us prosecuting a lot of these bankers and putting them in jail for the outright theft and fraud that they committed. You think we haven't lost a lot of houses? In my business, we've lost probably 30% of our customers because they were kicked out of their homes for foreclosure. And our customer base spans the entire spectrum economically. It's not like it's just one section. That's what's going on all around us. We are in dire straits. And I will say something, that this may not be the most critical election that we ever face, but it is the most critical election we face so far. And it's up to all of us to be responsible voters. Many people don't even know what responsible voting is. They don't even know what responsible being a juror in a trial is. The presumption of innocence. See, these days you walk in a jury room, for instance, and people just assume the guy's guilty just because he was charged. Well, that's not how the game is played, or not supposed to be ethically, morally, or honestly. And the same is true of voting. It is your loudest voice as a citizen, and you should take it seriously. Don't let anybody say, well, you're in my club, so you got to vote for our club members. The most responsible way to vote is you should walk into your polling place with your ballot, if you do that, or mail it in. You can do it at your kitchen table. But your predisposition should be to write in NOTA, N-O-T-A. It means, and everybody knows, none of the above. Every race should be a NOTA unless you actually support someone in that race, and then of course do support them. That would humble our politicians and let them see how thin their support is. When you see someone who thinks they've got 50% of the vote, and they did in the election, but it wasn't all from people who support them, it was people who support other people in their party, and so they just assumed they're good people. That's what happened. I want to see the politicians humbled. I'm willing to go the game. Let's see. So that you actually vote for what you want. That is the strongest vote you can have. Imagine 1 million votes being cast and the governor won with 150 votes. Do you think they'd want to take office? That's what we're looking at, and I'd encourage every one of you to consider being a responsible voter, because otherwise you're just throwing it away. It's like the old wasted vote thing that they tried to put out as propaganda. No, the only wasted vote is the vote not cast in good conscience. That's the only wasted vote, because when you don't do that, when you vote defensively against someone, what happens, and that's what really is going on, what happens is you take the vote off of your pile, making it smaller, and you put it onto theirs, making it appear bigger. So they assume that you support them. Don't give them the assumption. Don't give me the assumption. I'm not asking for it. I'm asking you to help straighten out Arizona. And with just some of the plans that I've mentioned here, I hope you get an idea of where I'm coming from. I want to get rid of the regulations that stop businesses from starting here. Probably don't even realize how bad it is, but let me give you an example. 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles, they repealed one law. One law. It was against vending your own homemade goods. One law. In 3 days, over 1,000 new businesses were started up because they repealed one law. So when you hear a candidate say, I'm going to go out and create jobs, well, first off, that's just poppycock. Because politics, government cannot create a single job. What it can do is allow jobs in the free market to blossom, get out of the way. That's why the mantra of the Libertarian is to get government out of the way. Let us be people, let us be humans, let us be free. It's a critical thing that we really have to take to heart. So don't poo-poo any of the candidates. There's another candidate who was on the America's Elect ballot. A group of people came into Arizona and several states, put a lot of money into it, got the signatures, got a party on the ballot called the America's Elect Party. And then all the people went away. So it was just sitting there empty. And one of the candidates, he figured it out and said, well, I'm one of them. I'm going to run as their candidate. And that's what he's doing. But don't poo-poo him. He might have some good ideas. Look at his ideas. I've seen his ideas. I'm not terribly impressed. But then again, I've seen the Republicans and Democrats. I can't find a bit of difference between them. Last night we had a debate on Channel 8. It was kind of fun. And I wanted to go out and smack both of them because it was just a little ouch, quit it, ouch, quit it. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. This is a governor's race, for crying out loud, and the world is watching. Because we're going to be using that videotape. But we've got to see that they don't know what they're doing. All of them are controlled by someone else. And I can absolutely assure you, nobody tells me what to say. Not my party, not anybody. Because what you get is the truth. And I think that makes it easy for me. People say, aren't you worried about what you said over there back then? No, because I may not have used the same words, but I guarantee you the story is exactly the same. It hasn't changed in 12 years. And I hope that that will impress upon you that there are people who actually believe in America. The rest of them believe in, let's see how much money we can get. But the political process, the campaigning, we hadn't even begged people for money during the primary, and people were all upset, saying, why aren't you begging for money? Well, because I believe that how a candidate runs their campaign is indicative of how they'd run the office, and I don't waste people's money. I was uncontested. Why would I go out and raise millions of dollars for that? I didn't want to, I refused to, and I know my supporters certainly appreciate it. Now, we are accepting contributions now, because we do want to run some commercials toward the end that I think will pretty much put these guys out in the weeds. At least it should. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun, without calling any of them any names, because this politics of personal destruction to me it's so childish, it's not even funny, but that's what they're doing, is trying to tear everybody down. Everybody's got things in their past that if you poke holes long enough, you get some water to come out. You're going to find something. As ridiculously stupid as they are, and I think all of the accusations are pretty stupid. You know, of course, Fred was a lobbyist. He begged for money from your tax dollars for the education people. So, okay, it's a job. Doug, okay, not everybody was happy with the deals he struck. Or that he stuck the taxpayer with a lot of money indirectly. It happens. But I wouldn't vote for either one of them anyway. I mean, I like them. They're nice people. We get along just fine. We joke around and stuff backstage. But there's no depth. They're all asking other people what to say and what to do. Every one of those commercials you see on TV is scripted. And it's scripted by what are called focus groups. Does everybody know what a focus group is? You hire a bunch of people, sit in a room, watch commercials, say, what'd you think about that? Let's change a couple words, watch it again, what'd you think about that? Until they get it just right, so that they can get the largest number of people to agree and say, that's a nice man or woman. It doesn't matter. But so when you see those things, understand that is not the candidate talking. That is a script. And it's kind of sad, really, that we've devolved to this state, but we've allowed them to do it by separating us. They want us to be separated by our sex, by our sexual preferences, by our color, by our religions. You name it, they've got a label for it, and then they're going to offer you money. Because if you want to know how to control a group, you fund it. That's why they're all special interest groups. They're getting money from the government. They did not invite me to a debate as much as it was on Channel 10, that's Fox. Fox doesn't like libertarians. Because when I'm on stage with Doug Ducey, his numbers go down because it shows he's just the muddle in the middle. And my numbers go up. That's what happens. And they're all trying to protect it. The only other debate that I was shut out of was the Arizona School Board sponsored it. Now, why on earth do you think they didn't want old me there? There you go. And that's what happens. These people try to play a game called hide the candidate. And it's not fair to you. They're the ones, they cheated you. Fox 10 cheated you out of your choices, and they stole you blind of the future. And yet some people say, oh, well, we didn't want to hear from them anyway. They don't have a chance to win. Let me tell you something. Everybody has a chance to win. All you need is more votes. All you need is more votes. And incidentally, even if you just had two parties playing this game, one of them's delusional because they both think they're going to win. So where's the wasted vote? It's not on the one who didn't win. If you voted for them and your conscience was clear, that wasn't a wasted vote. One of the greatest things, most liberating moments I've ever had was in the polling booth when I got to write in Ron Paul for president. And the gal says, you know, that's not going to count. I said, ma'am, it already has. They don't get it. You vote for what you want. And that's actually the Ron Paul thing, in fairness and full disclosure. I did it twice because I liked it so much the first time. Because there was somebody I could trust. I've known him for 30 years, for crying out loud. The man is exactly what he says he is. He's 10 times smarter than any of the other guys, and that's what makes him such a horrible speaker. Guy's thinking 10 thoughts at once, trying to push them out of one mouth. But you can tell from his sincerity, the man was real. And incidentally, for all the Republicans in the room, he was the only one who polled that would have beaten Barack Obama the last time around. Thank you very much for Romney. I mean, that was just amazing to me that people let that go by, the one chance. You don't get chances like a Ron Paul very often. You better grab it while it's there. So I'm hoping that during this election, now it's going to start, early balloting starts, I believe, on the 9th. They go out of October. That's just a couple of weeks away. And then you have some time to mull it over, and then, of course, November 4th. I hope during that time you'll really critically look at all of us. I hope you'll come up to my website. It's hessforgovernor.com. I even laid out my vision so that you can see the whole picture of how it all fits together, and we can be free and we can lead the nation rather than just being a bunch of hillbillies, which is definitely our reputation. You know, we do have a reputation around the country, and we've got our colorful people who have all contributed to that. But you know, one of the things that I thought of doing was a whole new idea. Let's see if we can give government revenue streams that don't depend on direct taxation. Pretty good idea, I thought. My plan is to put a monorail, a 6-track, high-speed monorail down the middle median of the interstates from I-10 on the southern border all the way up I-17 where it meets in Phoenix, all the way up to where it goes up to the northern border. That means you could live in Tucson and work in Flagstaff. Now think about this. The whole thing, lots of money, right? All privately funded. Part of it by you. I put together a proposal called We Own Arizona. The We Own Arizona program. That's where you can contribute, and 30% of the profits will be divided, much like you would shares in stock, amongst you. So you have an ongoing perpetual income. But it doesn't stop there, because part of the costs involved are the energy to run such a magnificent contraption. Mine will have a roof the entire length that is all solar photovoltaic cells. It's going to power itself, charge different battery banks along the way, and then sell the overage back to the power companies for a profit. That's pretty good. I thought $5 a day pass for our little monorail that some people like to call the Berry Rail, after Barry Goldwater, of course. But But I think that would make such a difference. Now imagine this monorail running all the way up, zippity-doo, you can go anywhere. It allows for more transactions in more rural areas because they can spur off. But at every station you could rent an electric rental car. $10. It'll go 300 miles. You want to go up and you get up to Cottonwood and you want to go up to Sedona, you zippity-doo up there in your little electric car, come back, get on the train, go back to Tucson, wherever you're from. I think that's the kind of forward vision that we can leave Arizona with, a legacy that will go on and on. I'll guarantee you other states will be doing exactly this. They'll be hooking up to it. And pretty soon we'll have high-speed trains all the way across the country. That's just one. There's another program that's part of the We Own Arizona program, and many people don't realize it, but in a country called Libya, there was a crazy guy, right? Everybody knew. Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Well, he really wasn't that crazy. He was crazy in our media. His people loved him. One of the things that he did was really interesting. He built the largest aqueduct system in the world, not since the Romans. He brought water to the desert. Because water isn't, despite what we've had here in the last couple of weeks, water is a problem. Water is gold to the man in a desert. And I think that we should start to solve that problem and alleviate it, working our way up from the Gulf of California. We can bring water up and desalinate it, also solar photovoltaic powered, so it doesn't cost anything as it comes up, and we can work it up, and it's going to take a number of years, of course, but we can gradually work it up to cover 80% of Arizona. I think that's smart, and that leaves in Arizona for the next generation. And I will cover just one more thing, because I think I've given you a whole bunch to chew on, but part of my program with the shutting the border down also allows for the doors to be open wider and people to come in and work. We need those people. Those people create jobs. They all have to eat. They all have to sleep, drive a car. They have to purchase stuff. So they do bring economic activity with them. So once they're here, I want to give them just a visitor's pass. So there won't be any more under-the-table employment, which is what a lot of people gripe about. And now we are going to tag them for 5% of everything they earn. We're going to call that an access to our free markets fee. That money is going to go into a fund that will not only pay for the border being secured, but it will also pay for any emergency medical that they might need. If they want education, it'll pay for that. It's going to be up to them to manage it and provide for themselves from that fund. That way you don't end up with a lot of the egregious things that happen in terms of employment. And one of the things that has always bothered me has been what I call it the La Migra syndrome. Everybody know what that is? That's when you hire somebody you know is an illegal. And you put them up on your roof to nail shingles for you, and at the end of the day they say, "Where's my $100?" And you say, "You ain't getting no $100, I'm calling La Migra." And they go scurrying. I won't tolerate somebody stealing a man's labor. Not at all. And I hope that you can see the ethical reason behind that. It happens a lot more than what you may think. These people are kept in the shadows. I want to bring them out, because that's what America is. My own family comes from a different direction, but my own family came from across the ocean to be here, and we're so damn grateful it wasn't even funny that we could speak German in the house, but if we stepped through the threshold, we had to be speaking English, or we're going to get cuffed upside the head, because you don't impose on the host nation. Doesn't that make sense?
Yes.
I think that's how it is. America should preserve those cultures. We have some pretty cool cultures here. We don't need to quash them. We don't need to make everybody all the same. I mean, heck, doesn't anybody like to go up to the reservations and see some of the little whoopee dancings and stuff? I do. I think that's very neat. Why not preserve all of America rather than just the part that we're part of? Because if everybody's just like us, I'm leaving. I mean, it'd be so boring. But that's pretty much what I'm about, and why I offer myself to you as a candidate for governor. I do promise you that once I get in, I will forget all political distinctions. I'm going to have to. Because one of the biggest problems that we face in our legislature right now is something called gridlock. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Well, most people think of it in terms of the political parties being gridlocked against each other, and that is true. but it actually locks us into enormous spending that the guys before put on us, so that we can't make any process. I will be the tiebreaker. And so that when you hear Doug, I just get such a kick out of Doug. He's always flapping about his endorsements. And people call me all the time asking for an endorsement. And so either yes or no. It doesn't mean I like him. It just means I just want to get a little publicity if I wanted his endorsements. That's why I don't ask for them, and I think they're really stupid and childish. But the whole idea is to try to bring people together. I think I can do that, and I am literally the only candidate who can prove it, because I did it last year in something that turned out to be an historic and monumental moment, when the Republican leadership tried to push us libertarians and third parties off of the ballot with something called HB 2305 that was designed to get us out of the way, because they thought we were stealing their votes, as if they owned it so arrogantly. And I remember when I talked with Eddie Farnsworth. Eddie's always been a pretty stalwart guy. Not this time. I called him up and said, Eddie, what are you doing? And he said, why'd you just want to get me mad? And I said, no, I want to hear you try to defend the indefensible. And he started flapping on about 4 or 5 races. Russell Pierce was one of them from out here. Of course, Kirsten Sinema and Kirkpatrick, and everybody, every time they lost a race, they blamed it on libertarians. And that was why. That was the motivation. In fact, somebody named Mesnard, one of our legislators, was caught in the well after the night of the first vote. It was actually called the final vote. The special session final vote. And a final vote is supposed to be final, right? It lost. HB 2305 was a 3-page bill that required notaries to be, you needed a notary endorsement on the back of a petition signature. No big thing. I was for it until that night, and that's when they added on 4 amendments that became part of the bill, one of which was the one to push libertarians off the ballot. I thought it was pretty sleazy and pretty sneaky. The vote went from 16 to 13, it lost. Then they had a reconsideration vote. Isn't that fun? It's a do-over. Another bite at the apple. And during that time, Mr. Mesnard was caught in the well of our legislature saying, we've got to get those libertarians off the ballot. They're spoiling our races. So it was obvious what it was all about, and it did go through. The second time it was 16-13 in the opposite direction. It passed, and of course, Brewer signed it within a few days. Which I warned them. I said, we're going to send it to the ballot. Eddie laughed at me. And he deserved it. Because in the last 35 years, since Evan Meacham was around, there hasn't been a successful citizens referendum on bad law in over 35 years and over 35 tries, one of which was the Medicaid expansion we all saw recently at the same time. Well, during that time, they tried to bribe me out of it. One of the legislators, Bob Thorpe, I don't mind mentioning names, Bob Thorpe called me down and said, well, we're going to take that part out, that part that libertarians don't like, because they saw we were getting close. He said, we'll give that to you. And I said, Bob, I don't want you to give me anything. I'd rather take it from you. And he didn't like that attitude, and I've heard that phrase from 8 different Republicans, so I know he's flapped on about it. Then they got mad because I spoke at the, I think it's Mojave Annual Republican Picnic up in, the Wallapai Mountains. And I might be wrong on the county. But I was up there and I was asked to speak by the vice chair, Michelle Arnett. When I arrived as the only non-Republican out in this wonderful park, 400 or 500 people, I could see the little biddies running up to Michelle saying, you can't let him speak, all that little girly stuff. She stood strong, woman of courage, woman of character. She said, no, he's going to speak. And then I asked her, I went up to her and said, Michelle, I appreciate that, man, you got my vote. How about I speak last? And I did. And boy, I'll tell you what, it was one of the funnest things I ever did see, because as a libertarian, I've always said that people are so objecting to some of our views until they understand what they are. That if there's 100 people in a room I'm speaking to, if 2 of them don't get up and leave while I'm speaking, I have not done my job. So I kind of like that attitude. Nowadays they don't leave, which is really strange. But interestingly enough, half of the crowd was literally cheering me, and half of the crowd was jeering me. I enjoyed it, so I didn't hold back any. And they got all mad on Facebook. We saw the big long thread, and blah, 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 they didn't argue with what I said. They just argued with my being there. He interrupted our club. And since then, they've changed the club rules, by the way. So now no non-Republican is allowed to speak. Isn't that funny? What really got them excited shortly thereafter, by the way, was 40 minutes later, I was speaking to the Democrat annual picnic. And then they got mad at me because I would bother talking to them Democrats. You just can't please some people. So as it went on, and they started seeing us making way, because I had brought together the largest, most diverse coalition in this state's history. We had the Greens, we had the Democrats, and we had Sheriff Richard Mack was part of our committee, as a matter of fact. We had Karen Johnson, we had the Goldwater Institute, the League of Women Voters. It was literally across the board, except for about half of the Republican Party, who was sticking with their party. They even, what's her name? The one running for Secretary of State, Michelle Reagan. She gathered up $500,000 a year to try to not let it go to the ballot. That's amazing. That's such a ripoff to you guys. And of course, it failed. They tried to buy back our petitions that were out getting signed, because it was a matter of needing 87,000 signatures in a 2-month period of time. That's why it hasn't been done before. Well, they saw we were getting close, and so what they do, Karl Rove, Nathan Sproul, these guys call over here and say we're going to put money in, and they spent $500,000 trying to buy back our signatures from our petition gatherers. Welcome to the Wild West. There's more. I mean, that was one of the sleaziest propositions. And then when they saw that it was overwhelming, because I deliberately was sandbagging to the press, who was calling me every day saying, where are you, how many numbers you got? I never told them the accurate numbers. I did not want to let them know we already had it in the bag. When the time came, it was September 12th, was the last day we had to turn them in, and we were going to turn them in on the 12th, but then one of my Republican friends called me and said they're going to try to shut down the Secretary of State's office. Talk about sleazy. They were going to try to bug it up so that we couldn't hand in our signatures. Well, I called the committee and said pretty much, hey, how about this? We're going to do it on the 11th, which turned out to be a fortuitous situation, gave us something else to talk about. On September 11th of last year, we turned in 147,000 verified signatures. Not one of them was bad. And we just thought that was funny as all get out. So what they do, it was going to the ballot. This thing had happened. It was going to the ballot. You know what these people who said we needed that original bill did? The same exact 16 people? They sponsored and repealed their law, because then you don't get to see their lack of integrity on your ballot. You think you're not being toyed with by your own party? I'm telling you what. But that was just one of the examples we overcame it. And when they told me that I couldn't, they said, pardon me, but little pissant libertarian, how are you going to get this thing on the ballot, ha ha ha. And it's just too big to fight, too big. And it reminded me of the story of David. Everybody's saying, hey, that Goliath fella, he's pretty big. He's big. He's too big. All David saw was a bigger target. That's the way I saw it, and we too overcame. I hope that you'll believe with me in the future of Arizona. I think I've got better ideas for a better Arizona. And I hope that this time you will vote responsibly, and I hope that's with me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.